My name is Eitan Chatayat and welcome to I'm That podcast, where I get to talk to some pretty incredible people. Some are friends and colleagues, some are clients, and some are people I haven't even met yet. On I'm That, we'll hear from them about who they are, what they do and why, stuff they love or hate, mistakes they've made, victories they've had. They're all known for something, but by the time we're through, the hope is they'll have revealed some things we didn't know about them. Our talk may be deep, profound, funny, who knows really. One thing for sure, it'll be interesting and honest. So if you're up for that, thank you for joining me on I'm That, and here we go. So I'm super excited because Troy Gua is here, and Troy is born and raised in Seattle. He's a passionately creative, a self-taught artist, designer, maker, tinkerer, continuously cultivating a prolific output of smart, bold work in a huge range of media. And it's produced with wit and a very crisp visual aesthetic. I'm a huge fan. For him, the idea comes first. Media of choice is whatever best serves the idea. And how he makes it, well, it's as wide in scope as the results. His subject matter, like his media choices, are fluid and addressing iconography and identity, referencing contemporary culture and his relationship with it, underscored and sewn together with his very unique visual language. So while he absolutely makes art to express himself and connect and commune with others, it might be more true to say that he makes art because of the addictive nature of the joy he derives from delighting others with the images and objects he makes. Troy, I know you. I'm just so happy to be speaking to you here today on I'm That. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. Likewise, I'm excited to be here with you.
Wow.
Long
Well,
time coming.
I still love how we met. I have to open it up because it's a little bit different. People might not know who you are,
Right.
but you are an amazing artist, and we connected over our love of Prince, as many people connect with you over their love with Prince.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read a little quote from a magazine article that came out a while back, and it says Troy Gua has created hundreds of Le Petit Prince LPP portraits and posts one every week on Instagram with the hashtag LPP Saturday. And you say in that interview, Prince is infinitely inspirational. He provides a never-ending fountain of source material. So we're going to talk about that. Before we do, I would love to open this with one question. And I'm putting
Okay.
you on the spot a little bit, which I always
Oh
ask.
no.
If you have to complete this sentence, what would you say? Troy Gua, I'm that.
Oh wow, we're opening up with that. Well, not to make you feel bad at all, but it's pronounced gua, like guacamole minus the camole. And it's
Wow.
one syllable instead of gua, it's gua.
Gua. It's
Gua.
much better the way you say it. So I'm that Gua. I'm
I'm
that
not
person.
gua, basically.
I'm that person
No.
that can't read last names. That's for
I
sure.
haven't even attempted yours, Eitan. So, and I don't think I will. But so I'm that, it's funny. I'm probably a lot of things, but I think what I'm mostly is I'm that label avoider. I've always strived to make my own way and not be put in any particular box. Although I know people like to do that, and it's easy, and that I do it too. But I think I have always fought against being labeled as any one particular type of thing, artist, person. So I'm that label avoider.
You know what? The funny thing is, little secret for everyone to hear, I guess, is that's kind of the point of I'm that.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the film I made, back in the day, I'm that Jew, and you think about Jew, it's a label, but then the piece breaks that stereotype by naming
Right.
everything under the sun that
Absolutely.
you actually are. So it kind of fucks with the whole notion of, well, I mean, and when you said I'm that label avoider, duh, it makes me think of someone that we both love, Mr. Prince Rogers Nelson,
Yeah,
which I have to ask you about off the get-go.
of course.
This is going to be on the post, of course, but I'd love for people to know right now where they can find you so that maybe as they're listening, they can actually look you up. So tell them where to
Mm,
go to so that as we're talking, they can see what I think is just just incredible, incredible work that you do.
Man, thank you so much. You're so kind to me. If we're talking about the Prince inspired work specifically, well, actually, let's just start with my website. It's troygua.com. So it's troygua.com. There's several different rabbit holes you can follow once you get there. You want to go to Le Petit Prince. Le Petit Prince is my tribute to my biggest hero and inspiration, Prince. And boy, it's so hard to describe it because it has evolved from what it started out as you know, what it is now is a way to continue and share Prince's legacy and tell his story in a really unique visual way of storytelling, I think. But it evolved from just being a photograph of a little sculptural figurine I made in the style of a Jerry Anderson super marionation figure, which I don't know if you're familiar with what that is or not. If you are, that's awesome. So they're 1960s and 70s, you know, marionettes that were made into films by this genius couple, Jerry Anderson, and I'm sorry I can't remember his wife's name at the moment, but they were just so fascinating to me as a kid, and they've always been like in the back of my mind, something that I wanted to recreate somehow.
Wasn't that kind of like Thunderbirds kind of style?
Thunderbirds, yes, yes, Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet. There's all kinds of, yeah, there's tons of them, and they have these like oversized heads, and they're very surreal looking. And I was fascinated by it as a kid. It's like, wow, that's so weird. Is it real? How is that working? And so that's just kind of that was the impetus, the seed for the Le Petit Prince visual.
So this visual that you're referencing, because of course this is a podcast and people will see and hopefully they'll check out your site, but it's a little Prince miniature, okay? And there's one, right? And then
Yeah,
you take, well, you know, why don't you tell us
yeah.
what you do?
Let's
Because I don't
let's
want
see
to,
if I can
yeah.
let's see if I can explain it. Yeah, so it is essentially one figure. Over time, I have created, sculpted more heads. So there's now like a selection of heads and a couple of different bodies that are, they have interchanging parts that I have modified and painted to, you know, reflect Prince. And there's different hairstyles. I make all the clothing. I create all the, well, almost all the instruments. If there are some things I can find that are in the scale that I need them to be, I will absolutely utilize them. If not, I just make my own stuff. And so what it is now is like I'm sort of telling the story of Prince's life and career in this surreal photographic series. And they're all set up dioramas and scenes that tell stories that I have culled from the internet and books over the years, and actually even more recently since Prince's unfortunate passing, because there are a lot of folks and associates that were close to him that are now, you know, telling their stories and their experiences with working and being around Prince. And I am using that as source material and creating images based on that.
You know what I found beautiful about what you're doing, and I discovered you quite by accident. I think it was because I made a film with a friend, and Wendy Melvoin and Lisa Coleman scored the track, and I became friends. And somehow we connected, and I saw what you were doing. And the beautiful thing about what you do is, like, I know I'm a huge Prince fan, as you know, and everyone who knows me knows that as well. And I know pretty much everything there is to know about Prince that everyone knows, everything that's out there. But along you come, and you have a very distinct and different type of art. And you put Prince in a situation with your art that we've never seen before, and you marry that to a story that we're either familiar with or we're not. And it could be something as simple as dressing him up in the parade era, or the era of, oh, I don't know, when he was up and coming, or Purple Rain, or Love Sexy. And you see him in the getup that we all know and love, and there's a story, and it kind of shows you another, it humanizes him in a way that we haven't seen before. It makes it much more intimate. And I've never seen an artistic approach like that with Prince. It actually reminds me a little bit of, in a funny way, of, I'm blanking. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking. I'll
Well,
have
can
to.
I just say I love that. I love that description and the intimacy that you find in the project. That's amazing to me, and I love that.
It's completely intimate. I mean, you've very graciously, as a gift, you sent me a calendar, which I have, and even when this calendar is over and done with, like the year, I still have these images, and I flip through them randomly. Like this week, I'm in the mood of this era, and but it is intimate because what you've created is, it really feels like it's him. You capture his spirit, you capture his
Oh,
personality, and
that's
you bring,
everything, man.
well, and that's what I want to talk about, because you you put all this homage, it's an homage to Prince, and you put it out there. How does it feel to feel that love coming back from the people, the fan base, myself included, who really, especially now, who wish he was still there, and in many ways he's still there because of, this is one way of him still being around. And that's what I mean by humanizing him.
Yeah.
He's still around when we see that. How does it feel?
Oh God, that's incredible, amazing, overwhelming. You know, we keep him alive. You and I, all of us, all of us Prince fans. We are the ones that keep him alive. So, to get the feedback that I do tells me that I'm doing my job and that people are responding to it, and hopefully they're sharing it and teaching some new folks about the amazing artist that Prince was, and what an incredible creative. There's just never been anyone like him, and there never will be, I don't think. And I just want more people to know that. I want more people to know about how amazing, how incredible this creative man was. Because
Yeah,
I think a lot of the times his visual and his flamboyance just overshadowed how amazing his skill and virtuosity really was, and his work ethic. And I mean, there's just, there's so many things about him that
well, I think all of that is coming out now. I think people who really understood, people who understand actually business, I think they
yeah,
saw it when he was alive, because, and I see this in you as well. And you've written for, the my brand, the Natty Branding Agency guest writer
yeah,
series, when you talked about how he influenced you, and it's his business ethic. I mean, as an artist, it's not enough to just have an idea. You have to have the idea, you have to make the idea, you have to make it well, then you have to perfect it, then you have to make sure people know about it, then you have to put it out there, and you have to market it, then you have to make sure
yeah,
that once it's been marketed, it's marketed even more. And he had not just the musical talent, he had the business talent, and he had the, it seems like he had the very difficult personality that goes along with sometimes being
right,
successful. You have to be ruthless, and it seemed like he was. I remembered, I was blanking before.
yeah, yeah,
Anne Frank, the story of Anne Frank during the Holocaust. So Anne Frank, she wrote a diary. It's a book. A lot of people don't want to read books, and especially today's generation. And the foundation for Anne Frank came out with a graphic novel. And I bought the graphic novel, and I read it, and I looked at it, and I experienced the art, and through that I was able to feel Anne Frank even more than her diary. And to me, that's what I was trying to say before, that there's the music,
yeah,
and then there's the person. And the way that you present the person to me is, because it's visual and it's an expression from someone else, it really, it's really incredible. So when did this obsession with Prince start? I know you've spoken about this before, but I'd love to.
yeah. Well, when I was 13 is like when it was cemented. Like my buddies down the street had MTV. I didn't have MTV, but my buddies down the street did. So I basically lived there. and MTV was on repeat. And so that was when I first saw Prince, with the 1999 and Little Red Corvette videos. And I was curious about him and, wondered, what the deal was. He was this interesting looking dude. I liked the music, but I wasn't, it wasn't like an obsession yet. I'm like 12 at the time. So then, summer of 1984, when Doves Cries on the radio nonstop. My mom, who was a stay-at-home mom at the time, picked up a newspaper route from somebody. So in the afternoons, she would deliver newspapers for a couple of weeks. Maybe it was a month, I don't remember. And I would go with her, and I got to pick a radio station. Well, so When Doves Cry over and over and over. And so I got to train my mom at the same time. I was, becoming obsessed. So then my sister, who was like 12 years older than me, she took me to see Purple Rain. I wasn't old enough to go on my own, but she took me to it, and that was it. You know, that was it. And so ever since then, I have listened to and learned everything I can about the man, and
But
yeah, I've
why not? Okay, Thriller, Michael Jackson, Thriller. I remember when
that's
that was crazy. I was like mind
yeah.
blown. Why not Michael Jackson? Why Prince?
I was actually into Michael Jackson before Prince came along. I was totally into MJ. There was something more. I mean, I was coming into my adolescence at the same time I discovered Prince, and Prince was more dangerous and more sexy. He was more sexual. He was, talking about girls and sex and this and that, and I was drawn to it. I was drawn to the dirtiness, quote unquote, of it, and the dangerousness, I guess, and the rebelliousness.
See, that's interesting because I felt the same way, and we have that in common when Purple Rain came out.
Yeah, I'm not going to
That's,
try and be one of those fans that say I was there from day one because I wasn't really
no, I mean,
watching.
no, me neither. I mean, but for me, it was Let's Go Crazy. When that video came out, I think I must have seen it 5,000 times. But what's interesting about what you're saying is like the sexuality drawn to that. Now, most people, most guys I know at the time, and I remember this, were like Prince. Prince is gay. Prince is not.
Yeah,
No,
isn't that funny?
he's not even. He's not like. What do you see? Like he's not the typical male. He was
I think it was.
yeah.
I think I've always felt a little bit of an outsider, and no matter what situation I am, I'm not necessarily 100% comfortable. So I think that I was drawn to this dude who was like ultimately confident in heels and ruffles, and you know what I mean? He just exuded confidence and assuredness, and I wanted to be that, and I wanted to be different.
There's
And
something very attractive. There's something very attractive. But first of all, I 1000% agree that to me, I can tell you that like when it comes to women, when it comes to men, I'm attracted to that. It might not be a sexual attraction, obviously, with men, but I get turned on by people who have confidence, and he was the epitome of that. And what you
absolutely,
said before about labels, and we'll get back to that now, because he didn't really seem to care ever. I'm sure it isn't entirely true because we all have our insecurities, but he never really cared too much about what people thought and what label, So let them think that I'm gay. Let them think that I'm black. Let them think that I'm white. Let them think that I'm a freak. Let them think that it's funk or rock or jazz. He didn't care. And he broke it all the
that's
time.
that's what drew me to him, is that there was no definitive this is what I am, and I was fascinated by that ambiguity.
So, on that note, I want to talk about you now because you're an artist, and LPP is not all that you do, and I want to talk about some of the other stuff that you do. So, as an artist specifically, how do you relate to that, or how does that? Because he's a source of inspiration for sure. We know
Yeah.
that, but that breaking the mold, the not caring, the doing what you want to do, the no, don't label me. How does that play into your art?
so difficult, man. I mean, ah, I am very eclectic in style. I make all kinds of different work, and I don't know. I feel like it may work against me as far as the traditional contemporary art world. I'm not easy to put into a box, and this is what this guy does, right? And I don't care. I don't necessarily want to be. I don't know, man. Like when you set me up with a friend of yours who was in the contemporary art world, and she had some questions for me about, what do you want? And I didn't answer in a way that I think was conducive to getting any kind of help because it's like you said about being ruthless. I don't think I'm at a point in my life that I want to be ruthless. Like if I'm okay, here's what I am. I'm that late bloomer. Like I didn't really start in this career of mine until I was in my mid 30s. So I feel like I'm I'm more satisfied, especially in the world today, moving through the world in a way that satisfies me creatively and can make others happy at the same time. If I can do that, then that is like the ultimate. But I don't necessarily need to to set the world on fire with my art right now. I think I've got a really good solid group of folks that are into me, and I would of course like to, grow that exponentially, but I don't know that I want to be ruthless in order to do it. So
It sounds to me like there's a lot of freedom in
maybe,
not being driven by things that would, there's a lot of pressure to
yeah.
please lots of people. But I think what I'm hearing is that you want to please what it is that turns you on and that makes you happy. And there's a lot
If
of freedom.
people want to come along for the ride, then come on, let's go. But yeah, um,
I think that people are coming along for the ride. I mean, with with every piece of art that you put there, and I follow you and I see what people say. I see because there's a lot of engagement on your social, which we'll talk about as well. Um, you you do have a fan base, and I think it is growing, and it will grow, and slow and steady wins the race. I think you know yeah, but you don't need to set the world on fire. But that's something that I think that's great.
I don't know if I answered the question about how Prince and his musical practice correlates to my own artistic practice. But the way it does is pretty much in every way. He was so eclectic and so willing to push boundaries and try new sounds and just he apparently didn't like the word experiment because that sounded like it wasn't a finished product. But he was experimental and just had no rules as far as how he wanted to create, and that's exactly how I want to be.
And still, yeah, and you are well. I mean, even when I hear you talking about this artist who inspires me as I wouldn't say an artist, but as a creative person, it kind of recharges me. It's like it's a reminder, and I think that what he brings to the table for you, the more people hear what inspires you, Troy, and not just your art, but also the what's behind your art and the inspiration behind your art, that in itself is inspirational. And maybe this would be a good point to hear a little bit more about the different types of art that you create. And again, I want people to go to Troy
Gua.
Gua, TROYGUA.com to look at the art as you're listening to this. But I know that you have, for example, Portals, and you have a Pop Hybrids series where you take kind of like these iconographic faces for pop hybrids at least, and you kind of like they're kind of on top of one another in this resin, high gloss resin. And I just saw that you put out Sylvester Stallone yesterday or the day before or something, and it's amazing. And you have to send it to him because he'll love it. But maybe you can tell us more about these different project so we can understand your range. And I also want to talk about the process of you creating that, because to me it's
Okay.
fascinating to watch the videos that you put up on social as well. It's a very visceral experience that to the listeners, you need to go now and you need to follow Troy and you need to watch his videos and see the art. You absolutely have to. But tell us about the art.
Boy. So the pieces you're talking about, the portraiture, the pop hybrids, they were born in 2008, I think. And it's a series that is continued on. So I say I don't like to repeat myself, but what I do like to do is go back and add to bodies of work that I have created over time. And this is the most extensive one aside from Le Petit Prince that I've worked on. And so taking an originally taking inspiration from Andy Warhol's celebrity pop iconography, I took images and of two separate people and juxtaposed them over each other into a new portrait with possibly new meanings. And it's like you mentioned the Sylvester piece, and it's actually the Sylvesters, which is Sylvester Stallone, who was this uber masculine motion picture superstar, Mr. Macho Man, and Sylvester, the Disco King Queen, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real,
Mhm,
et cetera, who
mhm.
was, gender fluid and androgynous. They both kind of set the 1970s, late 1970s on fire with their work, right? So they're both Sylvesters. They're both at the top of their game. One is like uber, masculine, straight, blah, blah, blah. One is gender fluid. So they're an interesting juxtaposition to me.
Are they, do
Uh,
they appear together as art?
they are together, so they're overlapped. Yeah.
So
So take a
that's
look
the
at that
thing.
one
Yeah,
again,
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So I
because they're
missed
also
that.
optical. They're kind of optical, fun games too, really. So most of them are, separate people juxtaposed over one another. Like for instance, you mentioned Michael Jackson. One of the very first pop hybrid pieces I did was called "The Boy King of Pop." So it's King Tut and Michael Jackson superimposed over each other. The names go together, the Boy King, King of Pop. So it's the Boy King of Pop. They are both young men thrust into the limelight, so to speak, without any choice of their own, right? They both died in masks, like literally and figuratively. So there's these connections that I like
Wait,
to
so
make.
I have to ask, the prince, is there a prince and another prince?
No, see, over time, I didn't want to put Prince with anybody else. That's how this other kind of aspect of this series happened, was because of Prince. I had too much reverence for Prince to combine him with somebody else. So what I did was took several eras of Prince as source material and layered them upon each other. And so every one of the Prince pieces is like four or five different eras layered upon. And same with Bowie. There's several Bowie pieces that are the same way.
Big Bowie fan?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I didn't come upon him until later, and then went back and studied.
Do you remember? I mean, I can remember specifically for me, Bowie, which album it was. But when you were younger, was there something? Was there a certain song or album that did it for you?
Well, it's I grew up the youngest of four kids, and the next older sibling was 9 years older than me, and then 10. And that brother was like my buddy. Like I used to hang out with him quite a bit. He's a bit of a loner, liked music a lot. I would go upstairs and we would listen to albums, and he would share all this music with me. And so I remember Bowie from it was Changes, I believe. The album Changes, where it's a black and white image of him holding a guitar and looking, yeah. And I was just kind of like, wow, this person is an alien, huh? This person is like from another planet or something, right? So I remember, and I remember the music, but I wasn't like as fascinated by Bowie as I was with Prince, obviously. But it was the late '90s I got into the industrial Bowie when he was doing work with like Trent Reznor, and that's when I like was like, ooh, this dude is still rocking. And so yeah,
He rocked all the way out.
yeah.
That guy rocked. For
Oh
me, it
yeah.
was Hunky Dory.
Oh nice.
That was the when I heard that album and I heard Life on Mars.
Yeah.
Wow, that was it.
There's another that reminds me of a moment in the Wes Anderson movie, The Life Aquatic with Steve
Mhm,
Zissou,
sure.
where that song's playing and Bill Murray is just found out he has a son and he walks out on the boat. It's just following him, walking out on the boat and lighting a joint and taking a puff. And it's just this beautiful cinematic moment to that song. So yeah,
I
I
totally,
don't know.
now I remember that scene. I totally forgot about that completely.
I
So now
love it. I
I have
love
to
it.
watch the movie again.
It's one of my favorites. Yeah,
So wait,
absolutely.
you talked about your brother, your brothers. Are you close to your family? Are you guys like what are they
Not
doing?
really. I
No.
mean, both my parents are gone, and they were pretty much the glue. That I mean, we're kind of like the 4 points of the compass, really. We're all quite a bit different. Three of us just got together actually over the past weekend, and we get along. We get along, but we're not super close.
Yeah, families are complicated. There's love, but there's also differences. But no, I hear you on that. So
Yeah.
when you talk about your and I want to because this is connected to family. When you talk about your art, and when I've spoken to you and your wife, you credit your
Mm.
wife with we talked about inspiration, we talked about Prince, but I find that your wife is a huge source of inspiration for you, and
Yeah,
she
she's actually
actually
number one.
yeah, and she actually was quite a bit of a rock for you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, how deep do you want to get? Because
Deep
I
as
can
you
get pretty
want.
deep about this. Yeah.
Deep, deep as you want.
Um, she is like I wouldn't be talking to you right now if it wasn't for her. Um, so we met in 2005. I was so speaking of family and brothers, I had been working for my next older brother for about 6 years when I met Catherine, and it was, I don't want to dog my brother out. It was just kind of not. It wasn't my type of job, and I felt like I was kind of stuck there. Like from day one, I was like, ah, shit, I shouldn't have done this. 6 years later, she just basically kind of rescued me from. I was kind of a shell of a person at that point, to be completely honest. I spoke when you introduced and spoke about the addictive joy that I get from sharing and seeing the joy that I give people with the images. I'm an addict. Like I was a drunk when I met Catherine. I was a complete alcoholic. She was a partier as well, and we kind of hit the ground running together for about a year and a half. And we fell for each other hard and partied that first year real hard, and then it started to crumble. And we decided that we enjoyed each other's company and loved each other too much to just like throw that away over substances. So we decided to together get sober. And so we did. And throughout that process, she realized that I had this gift. She saw all this art that I had been kind of storing in my place over the years. And she's like, "What are you doing that job? You need to work this out." And she was making pretty good money at the time, enough to allow me to quit my job. And she was going to support me until I could make this art thing work. And I still just saying it out loud, it's like I still, when I think about that, it's like what a leap of faith, and how amazing is that, and how grateful am I that this woman came into my life and gave me this gift of fulfilling my dream, right? My lifelong dream of being an artist. And yeah. So yeah, I'm like choked up just even thinking about it. But so that's what happened. I quit my job. Uh, I figured I just started making art. We got sober together and I started making art and figured out who needs art on their walls, coffee shops, hair salons. So I just started looking in want ads and just practiced hanging my art and having my art seen by people. And it just sort of grew from there. And over time, I was able to start selling work and hustling.
how amazing is it to have someone believe in you?
That is number one. It's absolutely number one for me personally. It's like having someone have the confidence in you that maybe you once had, but maybe lost for a while. If someone can like spark that again in you, that's like the biggest gift that anyone could give you. And I'm eternally grateful to Catherine.
Well, my personal message to Catherine, who I hope one day I get to meet, is also thank you. And I'm sure a lot of people want to say thank you to her because of what she enabled you to give into the world. I want to ask you, when it's like you say it in a sentence, but yeah, let's go deep. Like, addicted to substances, an alcoholic. How do you come out of that? How did you come out of that? Like, if you don't
We,
mind sharing.
I, well, I think we did it. We held each other accountable. I don't think either one of us probably had the desire or the willpower to do it on our own as separate individuals. And I think it was really important to both of us to show a good example for the other. And so we kind of held each other up as crutches
Did,
in
did
a
you do
way.
it through some type of programs, or was it just like,
No,
we're just going to do this?
it was white knuckling it, man. It was just us. And we lost all our friends basically and changed our lifestyle completely and replaced all our bad habits with good ones. And,
You
it
literally
wasn't,
avoided, sorry, you literally
no,
avoided
go ahead.
people.
Well, no, we didn't necessarily avoid people, but we sure stopped getting invited to places and things. And it's okay because we figured out that, a lot of those folks that maybe we hung out with, that was the only connection we really had was through alcohol or drugs. So maybe that wasn't the best friendship anyway.
What does Catherine do?
She does a lot. She's actually doing a master's program for counseling online at the same time that she does a full-time job working for Holland America Cruise Line as a personal cruise consultant. So she's been employed throughout the whole COVID uh, process, and it's been quite an experience for her. But I mean, she's kept the job the whole time, and things are starting to move back towards normal. But she is an incredibly busy woman. Like she keeps herself so busy.
Yeah, and I imagine that as you create your art and you're doing what you're doing, like you talked about the different kind of like styles or different I don't know what you
Bodies of work.
yeah, bodies of work that you have. And one of the questions that I have is, because I've seen videos as you're creating, I think I think it was your pop series when you're in front of this big table and you're pouring resin, and again, I want people to go out and to look at your site and check that out. But what's it like as you're creating, Troy? Like, is it all meticulously planned? Do you know exactly what you're doing? Do you have the vision set, or is it kind of like this free flow, kind of like more spontaneous, free form thing? Like, and also, it's not like you're painting. When you're doing LPP or when you're doing this resin work, what's going on in your mind? It seems like you have to really be on top of your shit. It's like it's not, I'm just going to draw. There's a lot of moving parts. How does that, what's the process?
Well, yeah, I mean it's been a an evolution, especially for the Pop Hybrid series, because they did initially start as meticulously hand painted acrylic on canvas paintings that I would then resin coat. And it's interesting that folks are so drawn into and interested in the resin coating process because that's really just kind of the cherry on the top of the cake. That's the easy part. The whole process of designing and creating the piece has evolved into becoming a purely digital process for me now. So I do a lot of work in Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator and that type of thing, going back and forth. And I have a process that I have just kind of put together over the years, myself. But like you said in the beginning in the intro, the idea comes first. So it's always about I almost always have a finished product in mind. Like I have a visual of what I want this idea to be manifested. physically as. So it is kind of all about the problem solving about how to make that thing real.
And it's
Yeah,
not,
it's interesting how you say like it's visceral, because that part is visceral, but the rest of the process is so not visceral.
well,
It is,
it's coming up with the concept. It's coming
yeah,
up with, like, for example, we talked about pop, the icons, the people, but then you also have the portals, and the portal
yeah.
series is about kind of like
Those are
light.
paintings, by the
Oh,
way.
those,
Those
oh,
are.
those are okay, great. So,
Yeah.
and that's about light and dark, right? Kind of.
Kind of. It's about finding hope, finding light, finding a reason, and finding a meaning in a seemingly meaningless universe. How's that?
That's pretty
It's
fucking morbid.
absurdism. Well, absurdism. It's in a dark time. They came out of a really dark time. For me, for us, for some folks, a particular demographic, I suppose, in America, the years between 2016 and 2020 were really dark, and basically just me, like, going back to basics and just trying to find light. So I was painting windows and portals and doors and ways to find this. Where's the light? I want to find the light. So that's what that series is about. And I wanted to do it in a way that was really minimalist, very graphic, kind of simple yet modern.
Is that still going on? Do you still add to that body of work?
I there are some sketches that I have in mind that I haven't implemented yet, but yeah, that's probably it's a series that I will visit again.
I'm very familiar with that process of, like, just having, at least when me doing what I do is I have an idea, and then I have to have the idea first. It doesn't just, like, come out of, like, so I mean, if we're talking about the pop hybrids, you have two people in mind. Wouldn't they be great? Then you have to,
Right.
so how do you develop, do you do research to find out which image you're going to use and kind of like
Yeah.
trace, or
Yeah. It's not, see, I always balk when people maybe mistake the series as just another pop icon portraiture series, because it's more than that, with the opposing individuals, and that sort of thing. So it is very personal to me, even though it's very commercially accessible. They all, every one of them come from me. Like, these are important icons to me for one reason or another. So it does all kind of stem from an interest, a fascination of mine in either one or both of these individuals, or just a Rolodex of ideas that I've kept over the years, like the Sylvesters, for instance, was one of them.
where do you talk about that, by the way? Like, for example, you have exhibitions, you showcase your work at galleries. Is that the place where you're able to really talk about or an interview like this, for example? But, like, for example, on your website, do you talk about the characters in the pop hybrid series?
I think I do. I don't know. I think I'll have to go back and look at my page
Because
to double check that. But
it's always interesting what's behind the art, like,
yeah,
and even as I'm talking to you, I'm discovering things that that's actually the meaningful stuff is just as, the meaning behind the art is important.
it is important. But at the same time, it's funny that we're talking about this now, because I've been really thinking about that particular thing, and why is it important? What's behind the art? And does it matter who the artist is if you are interested in this piece of art? Would it change your interest if you knew that the artist was someone else?
Well, I don't know if the artist was someone else, but let's talk about Prince for a second. So if we didn't know how Sign of the Times was written, and I think we know how it was written based on, he picked up a newspaper one day, and all of the page one through I don't know how many pages in the paper, he basically took stories from that paper, and out of that he created Sign of the Times. It's basically a day in the life of the world based
Yeah,
on the Star Tribune, right?
right.
And that, to me, when I heard that, my mind was blown. It actually did make the song more meaningful in that
Did
example.
it?
Yeah, but then
Right.
Purple
And
Rain,
I totally get
but Purple
that.
Rain, nobody knows really what Purple Rain is about. But,
Right.
maybe if we did know what he was thinking, that maybe, maybe it would be more. I guess it depends.
I think it depends. And I like the idea of not having to talk about art. I'm a visual artist for a reason, right? It's
Yeah.
like that's how I express myself is visually. In essence, I would prefer to just visually communicate.
Yeah, do you feel
Um,
uncomfortable? Do you feel uncomfortable talking about like not
yeah.
uncomfortable, maybe that's not the right word, but like it's like my sister. My sister is a videographer. She does everything on her iPhone. And I really respect her as an artist. I think that she's great. And I've told her, on her website, you should write about what's behind it, and she's like, well, I'm a visual artist, and I'm not good with words. I'm like, well, fucking get good with words then, because people want to know.
But
But at the
she's got
same,
a brother that's good with words.
well, yeah, but and I actually do respect what she's saying. Is that the way that you feel as well? Like that
I
you prefer?
do. I mean, yeah, it's difficult. Okay, there's a lot based around this idea. There's okay, there's a David Bowie quote that I love to use. He says, talking about art is like dancing about architecture. And that's how I feel about it. It's like it's for me, it's a visual medium. I feel like there are contemporary art world trends that use buzzwords and certain phraseologies, and there's a trendiness connected to the way you talk about art. And I am a self-taught, non-institutional artist, and I just don't have those chops, so I don't even want to go there
Yeah,
most of the time.
I hear you.
Um, and I wasn't sure I was going to talk about this, but since we are delving into this subject, I've been working pretty hard on creating a show using an alter ego because I want to take away any possible prejudice anybody that knows me might have if they walk into this gallery and experience the art. I want them to just experience the art on its own, you know, at its
because
face
because
value.
you've been labeled Troy, and
Yeah,
you want
maybe.
to, yeah, well, that's what it sounds like. You want that.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to take that label away. So it's an experiment. I want to see what happens. I want to see if anybody goes to the show first of all. And I want to see
So it's going
if
to be some
folks
random anonymous show by an artist with a different name, and
um in essence, it's not random in that it's at a gallery that I've had a show at in the past and we have an affiliation, but and it's an alter ego that has been with me for a long time actually, but it's never been a publicly debuted, so to speak. So, and I'm gonna zoom in to the opening using software that gives me a weird avatar, and
a deeper
yeah,
voice or a lighter,
and yep, and
high falsetto
a
like a
different
Camille,
voice.
Camille and
Right, I
Prince.
might be a Camille.
Yeah,
Hmm.
okay.
So we'll see what happens. I'm really stoked that the gallerist was on board for doing it, but
That's amazing.
and
Actually,
and the theme of the show is absurdism and the idea of trying to find meaning in a meaningless universe. So I'm using these objects of art as metaphors for that. It's like this object might have some meaning for me, but I want you to find the meaning for yourself. That's the essence of the show.
I love it. I think it's great.
Thanks.
It's going to be in Minneapolis,
Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah, that's where I am. Seattle.
Why did I think Minneapolis? Well, obviously,
Well,
I just
obviously,
I just got
that's
confused. I'm going to definitely edit that bit out because I just sound like a moron. Um, I want to ask you, because I'm also cognizant of time. So, besides Prince and your wife, who's been super, super influential to you, and why?
oh boy, that's really
Anyone?
uh yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to say my dad because I was always so impressed with how he kind of made quite a great life for himself after having coming from a pretty difficult upbringing and a lot of sad stories in his childhood, but he was an amazing father. I always felt safe. He, crafted a life with his wife, my mom, and he did it on his own terms essentially, and that is inspirational to me to be able to create something out of nothing. So he did that as well.
Anyone else?
Gosh, I don't know why this is
And take
so
take
difficult.
well, because it's
You
difficult.
know what?
It's
Muhammad Ali. I'm all about uh, folks who were forging their own paths and you know, kind of shucking the folks aside that are naysayers and just forging ahead.
well,
So
it
Muhammad
sounds
Ali is definitely one of those men too.
like people that did it their way.
Absolutely, that's it.
Yeah, he definitely did it his own way. I've been watching a lot of interviews of him in the last, in the last year. I'm on Facebook
Really?
a little bit more, and people post these videos and interviews and clips. Man, did he have a gift? I mean,
Yeah,
with expression. It's not just, of course, he was a good boxer, but it was his personality and
absolutely.
his defiance. And I think, what you said about you wanting to do things your way, or Prince, it's defiance actually,
You're right.
and having the chops to back it up. You can't just be defiant. You have to have something going for you as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think maybe I think of defiance like as a negative word, but it's not. I don't think, it's not. And you're right, it is defiance. And you have to be brave to be defiant too.
Yeah, bravery is, I especially see now. I talked about it with my last interview, a guy called Daniel Rosenberg, about anti-Semitism. We talked a lot about
Mm.
anti-Semitism, but we also talked a lot about cancel culture, which is very challenging right now. Because, and I don't know what your opinions are, and we don't need to get too deep into it, but like, there's, whether you're on the far left or on the far right, there's a mob. There's a mob out there, and it's very difficult today to speak up,
Yeah,
and because you're going to get torn down by this mob. And I think that you do have to be brave. You have to be very, very brave, and to be defiant. So I see defiance as,
the strength.
yeah, as a strength. Absolutely. I mean, hopefully you're on the right side. It's always subjective, but
Yeah,
from where I stand, there typically is a right and a wrong. And if you can be defiant in the face of the mob, which is, to me, inherently, that word is a negative, then that's ultimately a good thing. Troy,
yeah.
what's something? Okay, I'm going to hit you with something else, which is going to be very hard to answer. So think about it. What's something that absolutely nobody knows about you? Not even Catherine.
Not even
Not
Catherine.
even Catherine.
Hmm. Oh boy.
Or that maybe she knows, but nobody else
Mm,
knows. She
could
knows
be
everything.
silly. I could be silly. She knows pretty much everything. Mm, I was going to, like the thing that first pops into my head was like, I'm like a recovering addict, but we already covered that. And
And
I think a lot of people know that.
yeah, people know that. As someone who is either, for example, suffering from addiction, or it could be someone who is a struggling artist, based on things that you've gone through, Troy, which are not easy things, would you be able to share some advice with someone who might be listening now who's going through one of those things? Whether it's an addict, maybe, whether it's an artist, maybe, or something entirely different. Like, what advice, based on your experience, could you give someone? Something that was really hard for you, maybe.
Something that was really hard for me that changed everything was probably quitting my job. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but one of the most rewarding. It was one of the hardest things because I was having this internal struggle. My dad, who had passed away, 6 years prior, he was the reason why I took the job in the first place. I thought he would think it was a really cool thing that his two sons that didn't really get along that well were going to be working together. So saying goodbye to that was terrifying because I knew in the back of my mind my dad would have like, if he was alive, I don't know that I would have been able to actually do that, step away from that job, and surrender myself to Catherine, uh, to allow her to support me for an indefinite amount of time.
Because
Um,
you would be defying your dad and his wishes.
yeah, I'd be defying. I guess, yeah, I guess I'd be defying my, not only, he would just, I could hear him saying, "How can you can't not have a job? How are you going to pay your bills?" You know, these things are going in the back of my mind. So I don't think this is.
I actually think that that's something that a lot of people can relate to, myself included, because I know, I love my dad. My dad is 92 and God bless him, he's with us and he's been a huge influence on me. But it's taken a long time to kind of follow my path and not follow his. And his path was, my dad is was a CFO, very strong with economics and math. Guess what, Troy? All the things that I wasn't good at.
You're a writer.
I'm a, I'm a writer. I'm a creative.
Yeah,
I run a business now, and I'm good with numbers. I know how to, bring home the bacon and everything, and run a business. But that's something that was self-taught. But I guess what I'm saying is, you want to please your dad. I mean, I think as a son, maybe I'm making a generalization, but what I've heard is, and what I know is, like, you want your dad to respect you, and
absolutely.
a lot of that is kind of like not maybe doing what he says, but wanting him to look for your dad's approval. So it
Yeah,
actually makes complete sense to me when you said what you said, that it was, maybe it was his passing away that allowed you to move forward with your own path.
yeah. It took a while. It took a while to get there. And again, I'm not 100% sure I could have done it had my parents, been here. It's hard to say what would have or could have been. But I think the ultimate advice would be surrender to help. It,
Surrender.
it surrender to help. If you need help, and if someone is there offering help, take it. If someone sees something in you and they want to help you fan that flame that they see,
Listen to them.
listen to them.
Right.
Because sometimes you can't see it in yourself. Sometimes you've lost the ability to see that you even have that flame anymore, but others don't. And if they can see it and point you in that direction and kind of nurture that, that's enormous.
Fucking beautiful and fucking A. I'm glad I pushed a little because I think that's so helpful. And another thing is also, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's
There you go.
okay. It's okay to not know. There's strength in that, There's strength in
Yeah.
being soft. I think that's also a generational thing that we are more in touch with now. And before you had that, I can do this, and
Yeah.
what are you doing? You're gonna have someone support you. Well, they're gonna support me for a while, Dad, but I'm gonna make something of myself and be an artist that the people in Israel will know about and buy my
There
art.
you go. Right. See, that's the thing is like, I bet he'd be so proud of me now. And it's kind of a bummer, like this cosmic joke that neither one of my parents got to actually see me become who I was always meant to be. But, maybe they can. Who knows? But it's, I'd like to believe that I've made them proud.
You absolutely do. Troy, absolute pleasure
Eitan,
and joy. Before we go, and ending on such a nice note, you already spoke about what's coming up next for you. I push people always. I want them to see what you're doing, but say it again. TROYGUA.com. They can
that's
follow
it.
you on
Yeah,
Facebook as well, right?
absolutely. And Instagram. That's like probably the best place. So it's just at Troy Gua on Instagram. And Facebook, it's Troy Gua Art. So that's my public page.
Everyone, please, now, if you haven't done it already, please check out this guy's art. Buy some stuff. He has a store. He has calendars, postcards, books, shirts. I mean, the stuff is amazing. He's amazing and a beautiful soul. Troy, thank you.
You're amazing. Eitan, thank you so much, brother.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you.